They tell you that money is freedom, that the path to happiness is paved with hard work, good morals, and persistence. But that's the first illusion, the one that keeps most people chained for life, because the truth is simpler and far darker. Freedom has never been granted. It's been designed like a maze, a structure built so you can run endlessly, always feeling close to victory, never realizing the walls were built to keep you inside. Machiavelli understood this before capitalism was even born. He wrote that men are more easily deceived by the appearance of freedom than its reality. He knew that a clever ruler does not need soldiers to enslave his people, only systems that make them believe they are free. And so, centuries later, the modern rulers of money perfected this idea. They built a world where freedom is measured by the same currency that enslaves. They gave you wages, markets, dreams of independence, all while quietly programming the limits of your ambition. The poor are not victims of chance. They are products of design. Every paycheck, every debt, every social value you hold, it all fits into a framework engineered to sustain dependency. You call it economy. They call it architecture. When you're born, you enter a silent agreement. Your value is immediately tied to productivity, not existence. From your first day of school, you are trained not to think but to obey. You're told that success means stability. That stability means employment. And employment? It means renting your time to those who already own it. It's elegant, really. A system that convinces you to sell your life in fragments, hours for dollars, passion for security, dreams for promotions. You chase freedom through labor, while the elite buy freedom through your labor. They don't need to control you with violence anymore. They control you with desire. You want more money, more status, more validation. They feed you illusions of upward mobility, the idea that if you just work harder, you'll escape. But Machiavelli warned about this too. The wise prince allows his people to taste hope. Never too much, never too little. That hope keeps you docile. It keeps you striving inside the very system designed to drain you. You become the perfect modern servant, self-motivated, self-disciplined, self-exploited. Look closely at the symbols of success around you. The mortgage, the car, the brand, the career ladder, all wrapped in the language of achievement. But each is a mechanism of control disguised as opportunity. The mortgage ties you to a debt cycle that feeds the banking aristocracy. The car keeps you dependent on fossil monopolies. The job titles inflate your ego just enough to stop you from rebelling. And the career path ensures you stay too busy to ever notice the trap. The modern system doesn't need tyrants. It needs believers. It needs people who defend their own servitude as honor, people who take pride in their exhaustion, who mistake busyness for purpose. It needs millions to keep the wheel turning, not through chains, but through dreams. Because the greatest form of control isn't imprisonment. It's participation. The powerful understood long ago that wealth is not about accumulation, it's about flow. The poor chase money, the elite control how it moves. They don't work for income. They engineer systems that make your effort their profit. When you buy, they sell. When you save, they inflate. When you earn, they tax. When you invest, they manipulate. And when you lose, they call it the market correcting itself. They understand something the masses never question. Poverty is profitable, not by accident but by design. Debt creates interest. Interest creates leverage. Leverage creates control. This is the real architecture of wealth, invisible yet absolute. There's a reason you're encouraged to follow your passion instead of studying power. Because passion makes you productive, power makes you unpredictable. They want your dreams inside the system, not outside it. They need your creativity as fuel, not as rebellion. You see, true freedom isn't found in what you earn, it's found in what you understand. And understanding exposes the invisible gears turning beneath society's mask. Machiavelli's wisdom was never about cruelty for its own sake. It was about clarity, seeing the game without illusion. He warned that those who live in fantasy are destined to serve those who live in truth. And today the fantasy is economic fairness. The truth is economic design. You don't lose because you're lazy or uneducated. You lose because you're playing a game where the rules were written centuries before you were born and rewritten every time you get close to winning. Most people will never look up. They will trade their time for comfort, their awareness for entertainment, their power for peace of mind. They'll work 40 years and call it purpose. They'll retire broke and call it destiny. And they'll die believing they were free, because they were never told otherwise. But if you've listened this far, you already sense something deeper. The feeling that life is being orchestrated, not lived. That every decision offered to you, from your job to your choices, is a pre-designed illusion of control. That unease you feel when the world tells you to work hard and be patient. That's your mind rejecting the programming. And in that moment, you are closer to Machiavellian truth than most people will ever be, because the first step to power isn't wealth, it's awareness. And awareness is what the powerful fear most. In that silence, you realize freedom was never about choice. It was about control disguised as choice. And once you see the illusion, you can never unsee it. Poverty is not chaos. It is precision. A structure so ancient, so elegantly engineered, that it appears natural, like gravity, or weather, or fate. But unlike gravity, it was built by men. Every century perfects it. Every generation defends it, and every system, from feudalism to capitalism, is simply a new mask for the same equation. A few own the flow. The rest supply the motion. Machiavelli warned princes to never rely solely on loyalty or law to preserve power. He advised them to build systems, ones that make obedience feel inevitable. Modern rulers took that lesson, multiplied it by finance, and called it the economy. Think about how poverty persists even in times of abundance. The world has more wealth than ever recorded in history, and yet most live paycheck to paycheck, barely breathing under invisible chains of rent, debt, and distraction. That is not mismanagement. That is maintenance. The system is designed not to eliminate poverty, but to sustain it at the perfect equilibrium. Too much suffering and the people revolt. Too much comfort and they stop working. So a delicate balance is kept. Just enough struggle to keep you compliant. Just enough hope to keep you chasing. You call it motivation. They call it control feedback. The first layer of this architecture is education. You are not taught wealth, you are taught obedience. Every system of schooling is designed to produce predictable laborers, not independent thinkers. Children are rewarded for memorization, not curiosity. They are graded for conformity, not creativity. They learn to compete, not to question. Machiavelli would call this the preconditioning of loyalty. He knew that the best way to control a population was to define virtue in a way that benefits power. The modern version of virtue is being employable. The perfect citizen is not the one who rebels. It's the one who submits voluntarily in exchange for stability. The second layer is economics, the game of numbers that looks objective but is emotional manipulation in disguise. Inflation, interest rates, credit, all invisible levers that determine how much you struggle for survival. You are told these forces are natural, like the weather. They are not. They are policy, deliberate instruments of extraction. When prices rise, wages don't. When wages rise, taxes do. And when taxes fall, it's never for you. Because the economy is not a river of fairness. It's a system of controlled scarcity. A well-designed illusion, where you believe that every struggle is personal failure, not structural design. The third layer is morality. Yes, even virtue is weaponized. You are told that wealth comes from hard work, that saving is noble, that ambition is dangerous, that wanting more makes you greedy, all while those who say it build empires behind closed doors. It's Machiavellian brilliance at its finest. Control the story and you control the struggle. Convince people that poverty is a moral test, and they will wear their chains like badges of honor. The church once promised heaven to the obedient. Now capitalism promises success to the compliant. The altar has changed, but the faith remains the same. The fourth layer is debt. It is the invisible tax of the weak. The art of making freedom impossible without permission. Every loan, every credit card, every installment plan, they're not financial tools. They're psychological traps. Debt does not just extract wealth, it extracts time, the one currency you can never earn back. It transforms future energy into present obedience. You become too burdened to rebel, too distracted to reflect, too indebted to question. And those who hold your debt hold your destiny. This is why Machiavelli wrote that a prince should never waste cruelty. Use it once strategically, then let fear govern silently. Debt is that modern cruelty, subtle, quiet, permanent. It doesn't punish you openly, it bleeds you slowly. The fifth layer, and perhaps the most diabolical, is hope. Hope is the lubricant of control. The reason you wake up early, grind harder, and sacrifice your years to a future that was never promised. The system must always give you hope, but never results. It's a precise dosage of optimism, enough to keep you running, never enough to let you rest. That's why the lottery exists. That's why self-made billionaires are glorified like gods. That's why every story of success is wrapped in exception and not in pattern. It feeds the illusion that the system works when in truth it only appears to work for a few, so the rest continue believing. And when you fail, you don't question the system, you question yourself. That's the most perfect form of slavery. Look around. The poor aren't lazy. They are trapped in invisible architecture, moral, educational, psychological, and financial. Every road leads back to obedience. Even charity is part of the illusion. A performance of virtue that sustains guilt without solving cause. Corporations donate millions not to end poverty, but to brand it. Governments subsidize the illusion of compassion while quietly expanding control. Machiavelli would smile at such perfection, because the genius of modern power is that it no longer looks like tyranny. It looks like progress, it feels like opportunity. It sounds like freedom. And yet, beneath the noise, a few start to awaken. They see the structure not as chaos, but as pattern. They realize that money is not wealth, but leverage. That jobs are not purpose, but prisons. That taxes are not moral duty, but the maintenance fee of obedience. They see through the illusion of fairness and begin to ask the forbidden question: if poverty is programmed, who wrote the code? The answer is not one man or one nation. It is the collective machinery of belief, 1,000 invisible hands moving in perfect silence. And until that silence is broken, the program continues to run. Freedom does not begin when you earn more. It begins when you see more. Because once you understand that poverty is not failure but design, you stop begging the system for mercy. You start learning its language, and only those who learn the language of control ever escape it. Obedience is not born in the body. It begins in the mind. Long before the worker takes his first job, long before the citizen pays his first tax, long before the believer kneels, he has already been trained to submit. That training is invisible. It begins the moment you are taught to seek approval. From your parents, from your teachers, from your bosses, from society, you are conditioned to trade authenticity for acceptance. And by the time you reach adulthood, obedience feels like virtue. Machiavelli called it the education of consent. He wrote that a ruler should never demand loyalty by force. He should teach it through structure, make obedience feel moral, and rebellion feel shameful. The genius of modern power is that it has refined this into psychology. You wake up, scroll, fly through the noise, and compare your life to curated illusions. Every image is designed to remind you of what you lack: beauty, wealth, status, success. Comparison is the first step of obedience because it creates emotional hierarchy. You begin to see yourself as less, and the moment you internalize that, you become governable. The poor are not just financially poor, they are emotionally poor, trained to believe their worth must be earned through performance. Every like, every paycheck, every promotion becomes a hit of validation, a small approval that keeps them running in circles. They obey not because they must, but because they crave permission to exist. This is the modern version of slavery, voluntary servitude fueled by emotional hunger. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago when he observed how religion could pacify entire populations without force. He saw that fear of sin was stronger than fear of death. Today that fear has evolved, no longer divine but social. You fear irrelevance, you fear obscurity, you fear being unseen, and those who control your fears control your focus. Every platform, every brand, every ideology exploits this fundamental mechanism. They tell you to express yourself, but only within the frameworks they control. They let you speak, as long as you speak their language. They let you be free, as long as your freedom generates data, profit, or compliance. That's not freedom. That's management. The psychology of obedience operates through three invisible laws: fear, belonging, and distraction. Fear keeps you compliant. You are told that security lies in conformity, that challenging the system risks comfort, career, and social death. So you self-censor, not out of morality, but out of survival instinct. You become your own warden. Belonging keeps you attached. You identify with groups, tribes, ideologies, corporations, all of which define your identity for you. You call it community. They call it containment. You feel safe as long as you agree with the collective narrative, but step outside the group and that safety evaporates. Suddenly, you're an outsider, an outcast, a threat. That emotional punishment ensures obedience better than any law ever could. Distraction keeps you asleep. The modern world floods your senses with noise, trends, outrage, entertainment, stimulation. Every headline is bait. Every argument is a trap. They don't silence you anymore and they drown you. The result, you become reactive instead of reflective. And a man who reacts cannot strategize. He cannot plan. He cannot lead. He can only obey. You might think this manipulation is accidental, that the internet simply evolved this way. It didn't. Attention is the new currency of control, and every empire now competes to capture it. The elite no longer need to own land or armies. They own narratives, and through those narratives, they sculpt perception itself. Machiavelli predicted this evolution in The Prince. He warned that men are moved by two things: fear and gain. Control those and you control society. Modern rulers took that principle and digitized it. Fear is now viral. Gain is now virtual. Your emotions are harvested like crops. Your focus is mined like gold. Your obedience is automated, one notification at a time. But here's the most dangerous truth. The poor love their chains. They defend the system that exploits them because it gives them identity. They fight for brands. They argue for politicians. They die for flags, all while believing they are choosing freely. It's not ignorance, it's programming. The human mind, when conditioned long enough, mistakes captivity for comfort. That's why most never leave the mental plantation, because the cage feels like home. And when someone begins to awaken, to question the narrative, the system turns against them, not through punishment but ridicule. You are labeled cynical, paranoid, extremist. Your rebellion is framed as madness, and soon even you begin to wonder if it's safer to go back to sleep. That's how obedience sustains itself, not through violence, but through invalidation. It makes the thinker feel insane for thinking. There's a Machiavellian paradox in all this. The rulers of the modern world no longer need to rule directly. They have made the ruled rule themselves. You monitor your own speech to protect your reputation. You moderate your own ideas to stay employable. You adjust your beliefs to remain acceptable. They don't need to watch you. You watch yourself. This is the perfection of psychological control. A world where the prisoners guard the prison and call it progress, but there's an escape. Not through revolution, but through reconstruction. Once you see obedience for what it is, an emotional addiction, you can begin to break it. Machiavelli said, "A man who becomes aware of illusion must not destroy it, but master it." That is the modern path of rebellion. To learn the rules so well that you can bend them without breaking yourself. You don't fight the system. You understand it. You use its mechanisms, status, perception, control, not as prisons but as tools. You remain in the game but not of it, because true freedom is not the absence of control. It's the ability to control yourself while surrounded by those who cannot. In that silence, you realize something terrifying and liberating at once. They never needed to control you. They only needed you to forget who you are, and the moment you remember, the programming begins to break. Power no longer wears a crown. It wears a logo. It speaks not from thrones, but from screens. The rulers of today do not conquer with armies. They conquer with ideas. Machiavelli warned that the appearance of virtue is more useful than virtue itself. The modern elite took this to heart. They learned that control doesn't require force when you can shape perception. And so a quiet revolution took place, not in governments, but in attention. The world became a theater. Every nation a stage, every citizen an actor reciting lines they did not write. And behind the curtain stand the invisible rulers, unseen, unnamed, untouched. They don't tell you what to think. They tell you what to think about. Look at the architecture of modern information. Billions of people connected in real time. And yet what do they discuss? The same headlines, the same outrage, the same illusions of choice. Every news cycle is a loop designed to exhaust attention before awareness can form. The elite understand something the masses never question. Control the narrative and you control reality. They manufacture truth by repetition. They erase memory by distraction. They build entire ideologies out of emotion, not evidence. And because the masses no longer seek truth, they seek comfort. Lies become not only accepted, but desired. Machiavelli would call this the perfection of rule. When people no longer resist deception but demand it, the invisible rulers operate on a principle as old as Rome. Perception is currency. If you can define what others see, you no longer need to command what they do. Consider money itself, the most brilliant illusion ever designed. A piece of paper becomes power because people agree to treat it as such. A digital number on a screen becomes a measure of worth because the collective believes it. That's not economics, that's psychological alchemy. The elite don't chase money, they engineer its meaning. They decide when it inflates, when it collapses, when it shifts from paper to data to code. They don't profit from exchange, they profit from belief. When the system crashes, they buy. When it rises, they sell. When people panic, they expand. They have weaponized emotion into economic leverage. The result? A financial ecosystem that feeds on fear and thrives on confusion. But perception control goes beyond markets. It extends into morality itself. Once upon a time, religion defined virtue. Now corporations and media do. They tell you what causes to support, what values to signal, what outrage to feel this week. You are given the illusion of moral participation through hashtags, slogans, donations. But every movement is monetized, every voice is managed, every truth is filtered through algorithms. Machiavelli said that a wise ruler should appear merciful, faithful, humane, and upright, but be prepared to act otherwise. Modern power perfected that performance. Corporations drape themselves in justice while exploiting labor. Governments promise peace while funding control. Celebrities preach authenticity while selling illusion. This is not hypocrisy, it is strategy. They understood long ago that morality is perception, and perception can be purchased. The invisible rulers are not villains in the shadows. They are architects of order. They understand that chaos threatens their control, so they manage it instead. They don't suppress rebellion. They redirect it. When people grow restless, they give them new distractions, new enemies, new identities, new causes. They fragment the collective consciousness into tribes that hate each other more than they question power. Left versus right. Rich versus poor. Male versus female. Citizen versus foreigner. The sides change, the purpose does not. Divide the masses, and they will never unite against the throne. And the throne? It no longer stands in palaces. It exists in boardrooms, networks, data centers, and markets, where decisions are made that shape nations silently. The brilliance of modern power lies in its invisibility. You cannot fight what you cannot see. You cannot blame what you cannot name. So the system ensures that power always hides behind complexity. Ask who owns the world's media, and you find a few corporations. Ask who funds the world's debt, and you find a few banks. Ask who influences governments, and you find the same handful of interests repeating like a pattern in the code. But by the time you realize it, the story has already changed. A new scandal, a new crisis, a new war, and the people, ever reactive. Move on to the next illusion. That's how perception control works. It doesn't need censorship, it only needs velocity. The truth doesn't disappear, it drowns in motion, and yet, amidst this illusion, a few awaken. They stop asking what is happening and start asking who benefits. They look beyond morality and start studying mechanism, and suddenly the world rearranges itself before their eyes. They see the invisible hierarchy, the few who design, the many who obey. They see how the powerful manipulate both the oppressor and the oppressed, feeding conflict to sustain control. They see how choice has become the modern disguise of control. You can choose your job but not your wage. You can choose your president but not your policy. You can choose your product but not your market. And in this illusion of choice, you obey. Machiavelli once wrote, "Men are so simple and so obedient to necessity that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." He wasn't mocking humanity. He was describing the pattern that makes civilization possible and power eternal. The invisible rulers understood that pattern. They realized that deception doesn't work through force, it works through consent. And once you consent to the illusion, no chains are required. You defend your own captors. You justify their system. You even thank them for keeping you safe. That is the highest form of rule, when the people protect the power that oppresses them. The rulers of today are not evil. They are efficient. They simply play the game as it was designed to be played, with mastery, precision, and patience. The key. Tragedy is not that they exist. It's that most people could rise to their level, but never will. Because it requires the one thing the system cannot allow, seeing through the illusion. And once you see it, you cannot unsee. You can only decide to return to comfort, or to walk through the silence where power truly lives. Awareness is the last luxury the system allows, because once you begin to see, truly see, the design behind your life, your obedience fractures. The architecture of control no longer feels sacred. It begins to look mechanical, predictable, fragile, and that's when the illusion starts to break. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler should learn to see men as they are, not as they appear. But that principle was never meant only for rulers. It was meant for you, to see the world as it is, not as it's presented. To study the structure, not the story. To stop mistaking wealth for power, morality for control, and success for freedom. The moment you see through the illusion, you cross an invisible line. You stop being the subject of manipulation and begin observing the machinery itself. And what once felt oppressive begins to look useful, because awareness doesn't just free you, it arms you. The masses believe awareness is enlightenment, a soft spiritual awakening. It isn't. It's a form of warfare. Awareness is strategy in its purest form. It gives you the ability to recognize patterns before they trap you. It turns every emotional manipulation into a map, every social illusion into data. You no longer react, you calculate, you no longer chase, you position. You no longer seek approval. You observe how approval is sold. The system remains the same, but you change your relationship to it. That's the first step to power. The rich and powerful have always used awareness differently. They don't seek truth to feel moral. They seek it to gain leverage. They don't ask what's right. They ask what works. They don't rebel emotionally. They adapt strategically. That is the Machiavellian law of awareness. You cannot dominate what you don't understand, and understanding begins when you abandon illusion. The illusion of fairness. The illusion of equality. The illusion that life rewards goodness. The world is not built on justice, it's built on hierarchy, and hierarchy rewards perception, not morality. Once you accept that, not with despair, but with detachment, you begin to rise. Awareness transforms suffering into advantage. The poor see struggle as punishment. The wise see it as feedback. Every rejection, every failure, every loss, each one is data. It reveals what moves people, what drives power, what sustains the system. The powerful are not lucky. They are informed. They study emotion without drowning in it. They observe the masses as one might observe a river, chaotic, but predictable. Machiavelli would say, "The wise man does not fight the current. He learns to build a ship that sails it, and in that moment the world changes shape." You realize that systems are not prisons, though. They are patterns. They cannot be destroyed, but they can be mastered. Because once you see the code, you can rewrite your part of it. Here lies the paradox of awakening. At first, awareness isolates you. You feel disconnected from the noise, detached from the illusions that once motivated you. You lose the false comforts that once kept you asleep, but slowly that silence becomes strength. The solitude sharpens your perception. You begin to sense how people move, how attention flows, how fear is triggered, how desire is monetized. You stop being a player in the game. You become the observer of it. And from that position, you gain what every manipulator fears most: clarity. Because clarity cannot be bought, it cannot be corrupted. It sees through every disguise: wealth, politics, religion, ideology. It recognizes all power for what it truly is: the ability to shape perception. Awareness is not rebellion, it's evolution. You don't fight the system by attacking it. You outgrow it by understanding it too well to depend on it. When you stop seeking external permission, when your self-worth no longer swings on validation, the architecture loses its hold. You start moving in silence. You think strategically. You act surgically. That's when money begins to follow, not as luck, but as alignment, because power always flows to those who no longer need approval to act. Machiavelli knew this truth. To influence others, you must first master yourself. A ruler who cannot rule his own mind will always be ruled by others. So awareness begins not with the system, but with self. Observe your own impulses. Where do you seek validation? Whose approval governs your decisions? What fears dictate your silence? Every time you answer one honestly, another thread of obedience snaps. Awareness dismantles control by turning consciousness inward. You no longer project power onto the world. You reclaim it. And once that internal empire is built, no ruler, no ideology, no economy can enslave you again, because a man who sees the game clearly cannot be played. Machiavelli was never teaching tyranny. He was teaching perception, how to see through pretense, how to move within chaos, how to hold silence where others scream. His lesson was not be cruel, it was be conscious, because consciousness is the only force that power fears. The poor obey because they cannot see. The free observe because they refuse not to, and when you reach that state, where illusion loses its weight, where morality becomes awareness, where silence becomes strength, you understand what Machiavelli meant all along: power first, money follows. Awareness decides both. You've seen the walls. You've traced the architecture. Now you know poverty isn't an accident, it's programming. But awareness rewrites the code. So the question isn't whether the system is fair. It's whether you're still asleep inside it, and if you've come this far, you've already started to wake up.